Hey guys, welcome back. You're here with me, Baby Firefly, the taxidermy witch, and we're talking about Gary Ridgway again. This is part 4. 1, 2, 3, installment 4 on Gary Leon Ridgway, the Riverman, the Green River Killer. We left off talking about that by 1988, so if you haven't seen the first part of this, go back and watch part 1, 2, 3, but we left off talking about by 1988, 40 plus women had disappeared, coined under the Green River Killer, where they were either dumped near the Green River, in the Green River, or up in the mountains near the Green River, but all within the area of Seattle. This killer was still on the loose in 1988. So, meanwhile, Gary Ridgway, he marries wife number 3, and her name is Judith Lynch. And they were married in 1988. As newlyweds, they were so happy. They were always smiling, adoring each other. They were never seen apart. They were always seen together. Again, I think this is part of Gary's creation of the perfect life, because he can't create a perfect life otherwise. Everyone around him sees him as like this kind of weirdo, this not normal. So he's got to create this perfect life and he knows how to make women fall for him, because we know this, because he's been doing it where he lures in women to be his victims. So he's good at it. He's good at playing like a nice guy, when really inside he's very traumatized, very broken from his mother, and then really torn apart from his second and first wife. So he continues to murder right under Judith's nose, and he's a very good actor. He still works at the paint company in Kenworth, and the workers are suspicious of him because he was questioned for the Green River murders earlier on. Remember when I talked about in the last video, he was seen and known as a John, or a man who purchases female sex workers on Highway 99, aka Aurora. So people at work now are really suspicious of him, because not only have they always thought he's a weirdo, but now he's been questioned for these murders. Of course, he got away with it, but and it was passed on, but people still see this in him. All right. Now where are we at? This is also some fucked up shit, you guys. This is some stuff that Gary did. Like, every serial killer has their trophy, okay? Whether it's Jeffrey Dahmer and he keeps penises in his freezer, or it's Ed Gein and he keeps the skins of his victims in the home to wear. Every serial killer has their trophy, and they come in many different forms. The Moors murderers had them in videotapes, audio tapes of the murders, so they could relive them when they listened to them again. Everyone seems to have a different thing, but Gary's signature trophy was to keep the jewelry of the victims. And guess what he did with the jewelry? Get creative, because this is pretty freaking creative. So at the Kenworth truck and paint plant, workers, like I said, are suspicious of him, etc. He gets the nickname Green River Gary, because he's been questioned about the Green River killings. It's so weird. He used his trophies of stolen jewelry from victims, so whether it be rings, bracelets, lockets, necklaces, he would place them in the bathrooms, like the women's bathrooms. He would put them in there, and sometimes even the men's bathrooms. he knew people pick them up because they would be gone later. And he would really get a high from seeing other people, civilians from his work, have stolen the jewelry and are wearing it on their bodies, something that he pulled up off of a corpse. Wow. Right? Wow. Wow, Gary. So I just have to take a breath and like recenter really quick because I don't edit my videos, and that's just like, to me, wow. And so he saw this as like kind of like pranks, just like he used to tell. Remember I told you his second wife, he used to jump up on her and scare her, and he would really get excitement from that. And when Gary, it seems when Gary got excitement from something, it was also, or excitement or fear, like whether it be positive or negative, there was some kind of sexual aspect tied to it. Because like we said in episode number 1 of what his mother used to do to him to humiliate him, and then also add in the like vigorous genital washing, tied in that sexual element. So his head is not exactly where most of us might be. And I think we need to have a little bit of sympathy for his childhood. Alright, so moving along. Yeah, please watch the first couple episodes I did if you don't know his childhood. So he would really get excitement from seeing his trophies on regular civilians. And that's why he placed them at work, so he could see them anytime. Because if you keep those on you, you're going to be a suspect, right? But if he just placed them and then random people had them, wow, it was... it's kind of a good cover-up as well, yes? Sometimes he would even give them to friends. So he got great pleasure from this. He also had large garage sales and sold his victims jewelry and shoes. So not only did he get rid of them at work and see them as trophies, but he also got rid of them at garage sales, their shoes and their jewelry. So he was still killing, but less bodies were being found at this point. Gary has become more careful and has a flawless system. Like, in his mind, this is working perfectly. We've had so many victims, so many wives, so many people close to us. Everything is just happening right here in almost plain nightlight or daylight, and nobody's seeing it. So Gary is, again, this power is rising. Dave Reichert and the task force, sadly, over the years, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the budgets dwindle because there's no progress happening. Again, science isn't progressing. They're saving all of this evidence in freezers, which is costing money. Everything is costing money. Finding the bodies, looking for the missing people. There's so much going on in one area for one task force to be working with. So it really starts to dwindle. And in 1992, only one detective was left. Okay? And women were disappearing just like as much as they were before. Which boggles me that the nation wouldn't have come together to find this person, like, and help with their other tax fund dollars. I don't understand, but I should look more into it. But again, like I say, remember in the 1980s, before DNA testing, they were saving all this stuff. They were putting it in lockers, the semen, the clothing, the everything, just in case. So, luckily, science did progress. In the summer of 2001, DNA technology finally was good enough to analyze the DNA from earlier on in the killings. 19 years after Marcia Chapman, which was the first victim of Gary's, was strangled and left to rot on the Green River banks. 19 years after that, um, the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab was able to finally match Gary to that DNA 19 years later. So everything they did, all of that stuff that we've talked about in these last 3 episodes that they saved up in that locker and they didn't know why. I tell this true crime case because I think it's really important to see the before and after DNA and how rampant, what the fuck ever, true crime used to be and how it's slowed down now. How rampant serial killers used to be able to be and how it's different now. So I think that's a good point to reflect upon. So finally, 19 years after Marcia Chapman, they matched Gary's DNA, and then they matched his DNA to Carol Christensen, and then they matched him to so many others. Like, it was just kind of like a domino effect after that. Dave Reichert, which is the main man, who, like, never, ever, ever gave up on this case. Even when he was taken off of the case, like, he never gave up. At some point, I'm going to show a picture of his face. I'll show you a picture of Gary Ridgeway as well. But Dave Reichert is a face that, and a name that I will never forget. Because he worked so hard, and I've read so many novels, true crime books about Gary Ridgeway, and just Dave Reichert, and man, his, like, my heart goes out to him. He was a big contributor. So, like I say, the task force got down to 1. Finally, in the 80s, they figured out the DNA. In the summer of 2001, the technology happened. Match. Dave Reichert and the task force all had tears of joy in relief. An unforgettable moment, they say. An unforgettable moment when finally all of their hard work, all of their belief, all of their, like, time and energy, their whole careers, some of them, because for 20 years is a whole career for a lot of people, put into something that you couldn't figure out, finally your heart feels better about it. You feel like your time, your energy was worth something. Absolutely. So, how was Gary figured out, right? Do you want to know? Do you? I could leave it till the next episode, or I could tell you right now. What will I do? Let's have a smoke and think about it. Basically, how they finally figured it out was because they found microscopic pieces of paint from the Kenworth paint plant on the bodies. So that directly, and on all of the bodies. So basically, Gary was at work in his work clothes, painting at the Kenworth paint plant in SeaTac. Went home, killed people, and those fragments of the paint, the same exact paint, because you can, like, tell this paint from that paint from this paint, was on the bodies. You know, like semen aside, the paint was on the bodies. So that was the main thing that attached Gary to the DNA link. It was a direct link. It was chemically identical from the bodies in 1983, from the bodies in 1984, from the bodies in 1987. Everything was connected. So, on November 30th, 2001, it was a big day in the history of Seattle because finally we were at peace. That we had solace. We knew who'd done this. We knew that we'd found them. Can you imagine being in a city in the US of A where everything is freedom, justice, and living where people are just, women are just falling off the side of the earth and, like, in horrible ways, ending up in rivers, in mountains, in horrible ways, as we explained before what Gary had been doing to these bodies. we're going to leave off at November 30th, 2001. A big day in the history of Seattle and the Pacific Northwest in general. And again, if you didn't watch the first 3, let's try and watch them in sequence. Come back for number 5. And know that we're going to have a really good time exploring this. We're going to explore a lot of different parts to it, a lot of different opinions. And I want to hear your opinions in the comments. Because if you put your opinions in the comments, I will reply to them in my notes on the next video. Sounds good. I want to hear from my Taxidermy Witch family members. How are we feeling about Gary Ridgway? But yes, there was finally peace in this area of the world because we knew who was caught in behind bars. But the story gets so much more weird and a little more tragic. So we'll come back. Thanks for joining me, Baby Firefly, the Taxidermy Witch, while we talked about Gary Leon Ridgway, the Riverman, the Green River Killer. It's Love and Lightning. See you guys later.